I have been playing Madden 24 since its release. It's the first time I've truly committed to making content with the Madden franchise, which also means it is the first time I have played the game for the full life cycle of the game. I want to preface all of what I'm about to say with the fact that I am a franchise simulation style Madden player. I play to rebuild teams and try to get the most realistic games possible while also still being fun and entertaining. I mention that because people who play Ultimate Team and people who play competitively online may have vastly different experiences than those of us that play simulation style. This video will be split into 4 different sections: presentation, gameplay, franchise mode, and superstar mode. With all that out of the way, here are all the things I hated about Madden 24 and why I thought it was a genuinely awful game. Let's start with presentation. The presentation practically does not exist. There are no graphics on the screen when records are broken. In my final season of my quarterback career mode, we absolutely shattered the receiving record with Jameson Williams, and he was also the first receiver to ever hit 2,000 yards in a single season. When a record like that is broken, there should be something celebrating it. There should be some sort of cutscene of the team rallying around their guy and celebrating with him. Just a few more yards, he got it! He got it! The first down to the 48, Jameson Williams, 199 yards receiving today, which means that with the 6 he had over 1,800, he is now at 2,005 yards in a single season. Just absolutely stepped all over the receiving record, and the game doesn't show a single thing to indicate that he just broke one of the most sought after records in wide receiving history in the NFL. There should at the very least be a graphic on the screen indicating that he is the new record holder, what the previous record was and what the new record is. And that should include team records. If a player breaks a long-standing team record, there should be a graphic and a celebration on the screen to indicate that that record is broken. I understand this is mostly a franchise issue, but this could also go for single game records while you're just playing Play Now. I shouldn't have to Google if my player is about to break an NFL record. The game should know that and should be informing the player. And in fact, the game does know these things because you can look at the history of the NFL and see what the current standing records are. The halftime report is a little boring and lazy. I wish there was more in depth. You go back to like NFL 2K5 and they had the whole Chris Berman halftime report. I want something like that, something more entertaining. Again, this is more franchise related. The ticker at the bottom is a little bit useless. It's nice to have it there and to be able to see game scores from around the league. I wish it would give more information as well. I think MLB The Show has done a great job with their ticker. It will occasionally show you the standings within your division, the standings of the wild card race, injuries, rookies that are playing well. It even shows minor league affiliate teams and how they are doing. I'll try to edit and zoom in on it at the bottom, but the ticker at the bottom just said that the Yankees were gonna reduce their win total this season from last season. That's so sick. I love seeing stats like that. Cubs to decrease their 2024 win total 97 by 17 games. Pirates to decrease their win total. It's just so cool. Look at that down at the bottom. The ticker actually gives such worthwhile and interesting information. The ticker in MLB The Show gives a ton of information that is super useful, especially as a content creator. The ticker in Madden just tells me if the Chiefs won that week, basically. There are no game-specific statistics. And what I mean by that is, let's say the Broncos are coming into a match of having lost the previous 4 matchups against the Chiefs. There should be information to tell us that. Create the narrative. What makes franchise mode so fun and what makes the NFL in general so fun is the narratives surrounding each game. I bring up the Broncos because last season they had lost their previous, I think, 8 matchups against the Chiefs and have now won against the Chiefs, and that was a huge narrative surrounding that game. There should be narratives like that in franchise mode and in Madden, but the game is too lazy to add those, so we as the players have to add them ourselves. And as a content creator, I sort of expect it from myself, but if somebody is just playing Madden franchise mode for fun, they should not be expected to create these narratives. The game should be creating the narratives for you, for your enjoyment in the same way that broadcasts create this narrative in the real NFL. And this last one in presentation has bothered me for years. How are retired numbers not coded into the game? MLB The Show has retired numbers. NBA 2K has retired numbers. In Madden, there are no retired numbers. So every single season that rookies come in, I have to go look and make sure that they didn't steal retired numbers because that helps my immersion. There should be a setting when you enter franchise mode to have retired numbers enabled or disabled, and you should be able to turn this off or on at any given time. If people don't care about retired numbers and they want to be able to use number 7 on the Broncos, then go for it. Allow them to do that by just having that setting disabled. But if there are players like me who go for an immersive simulation style experience, allow me to have that setting on so that it can help my immersion and I don't personally have to keep track of the retired numbers. This seems like it should be incredibly easy to implement, and it's still not. EA and Madden have made it clear that they do not care about presenting the product. In fact, the only game that has any real type of celebration at the end is the Super Bowl. Speaking of which, why do the NFC and AFC championship games not have any celebration post-game? It is literally like it is a regular season game. It is so frustrating. Let's move on to gameplay issues. The game is just too easy against the CPU. All Madden is not challenging for me personally. Simulation style gaming does not feel like simulation at all. In fact, during most of my franchise, I have played on sliders that contain zeros in many of the categories, just to try to make it more of a challenge. Offense is way too easy to come by, and the defense is practically non-existent at times. Receiver bumping is maybe my biggest issue with the entire game. Tyler's back to throw again. Did you guys see how hard JMO just got bumped? Did you guys see that? Imagine if I had thrown that, I would have been so tilted. And you know what? I did almost throw it to JMO because from this look, he's about to break open from the safety, but look at how bad JMO gets bumped here. Oh my God, it just completely stops him in his tracks. With the world becoming more and more AI centric, you'd think that Madden could have some type of AI to allow the receivers that are running routes that go by each other to not hit each other, to take avoiding measures to not run into each other. Also to take avoiding measures to not run into linebackers potentially, or safeties, or corners. And some of the worst cases of this are when a running back running a screen just stays running into his right tackle or right guard and refuses to just move out of the way to continue the route that his screen has set up. The bumping from receivers is absolutely insane, and it continues to be a problem year after year. This one is weirdly specific to Superstar mode, but it seems like the CPU running back intelligence is very bad. But when I play in franchise mode against a running back, that running back seems fine, but when I play Superstar mode with a running back, those running backs seem to avoid running into open space. The CPU time management and decision making is absurd. In my Superstar mode, they were constantly faking field goals, faking punts, and going for it on 4th down when my player is not on the field. And then also wanting to not kick the field goal to go up 2 possessions with less than 2 minutes on the clock. And they want us to go for this? Are they for real? Do you know the percentage chance we have to win if we just kick a field goal here? So now we have a 2 possession lead and they have no timeouts and they have to drive basically the same distance as if we failed the 4th down conversion. Are you guys dumb? The CPU does not use its timeouts properly and just in general is very dumb, and it takes away from the immersion. There are times in my franchise mode where I've wanted to use a timeout myself to help the CPU just because they should be calling their own timeout. The blocking in this game is horrendous. The amount of times my tackle has an edge rusher basically straight across from him and will instead go for a linebacker is too many to count. God, this is really funny. Look at the left tackle. Where is he going? He wants the linebacker at the 2nd level, just forgets, I guess, that the edge rusher exists, and he gets to come in for free. That is so funny. Oftentimes, the tackles will just let the edge rushers by, and this especially seems to be the case if you have a tight end to the left or right of a tackle, and they are running a route. I understand that the edge rushers will try to break away from a block if I am running away from the pocket, but most of the time, by by the time I have snapped the ball, the edge rusher has just ran past the tackle. Safeties in this game are absolutely terrible. I saw Bengal having this issue in his Falcons franchise as well, where even very highly rated safeties are just getting absolutely scorched. And they seem to be programmed to be slow for some reason. I have oftentimes had somebody run past one of my 93 speed safeties with much lower speed, but then the safety is unable to keep up. It seems to happen the most when you press the sure tackle button. They just slow down and stop, and instead of attempting the tackle, they are stuck in a slow speed animation for the duration of the play. And if this was in fact the case, it was never patched and is still an issue to this day. It makes the safety position feel useless and boring when oftentimes those are the players that are the most athletic and intelligent on the field. Quarterbacks throw the ball away at the worst possible time instead of running. And this even goes for quarterbacks that are considered running quarterbacks. There are often times where I would chase quarterbacks like Kyler and Lamar out of the pocket, and then instead of running to the open space and getting a decent chunk of yardage, they just throw it away as they get closer to the sideline. Third and very, very long to go. Kyler under pressure, taking off to run, maybe throws it away. On 3rd and 17, should have taken off to run. I mean, he had plenty of room. This is stupid. Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are some of the best runners in all of the NFL, let alone the quarterback position. They should be running the ball when they have the opportunity to. I understand in previous games they were maybe running the ball a bit too much, but you guys have to be able to strike a balance with this. And quarterbacks that have the pocket passer archetype just straight up refuse to run at all. So I have found myself going in and editing those quarterbacks to at the very least be balanced so that they will run on occasion. Passes being out of reach despite hitting the receiver in the chest. The amount of times in my superstar mode where I threw it to a receiver, it hit him in the hands, and then I see at the bottom of the screen, inaccurate, out of reach, is ridiculous. If the receiver has an opportunity to catch a ball, they should be attempting to make the catch. But as soon as the pass has left the quarterback's hand, Madden has deemed that that pass is out of reach and therefore will not be caught regardless. This one kind of ties into the safeties that I was talking about, but player speed seems almost random at times. And you can change the slider to make the speed threshold lower, meaning that slower players will look slower. But even with this on 0, it just seems random. Players with 93 speed look slower than guys with 88 speed. And it seems to be regardless of the acceleration stat. Corners switching assignments after an audible and just straight up leaving the guy they are one-on-one with. This has happened a lot in my Broncos franchise, where I will call an audible and PS2, who is lined up one-on-one with a wide receiver, as soon as the ball is snapped, will run across the field to, for some reason, double up a different receiver. Lamar lobs one up to Zay Flowers, and there's nobody in coverage. Touchdown, Ravens. It's my fault because I know this bug exists, but I did audible to a blitz play. I thought it would be good to get some pressure on Lamar. I saw PS2 over here on Zay Flowers and thought nothing of it. I should have looked at the play art because it would have shown that for some reason, Pat Surtain, I think, was set up to be on Mark Andrews. So you'll see he immediately just sprints to the opposite side of the field, leaving Zay Flowers completely on his own. And by the time I notice it, it's too late because he was lined up straight across from the receiver. I thought he was guarding, so I couldn't tell that he was gonna go after somebody else. This one is clearly a bug. It is not something that they intended, at least I'm pretty sure, but it has come back to bite me several times. It seems to happen most when I audible to a certain type of blitz, but it should not be happening at all. And I got reminded of this one when mentioning the passes being out of reach, but oftentimes receivers will not even attempt to move towards the ball when it is inaccurate. It's like they see that it's inaccurate and the wide receiver AI just believes that they have no chance and they give up on the play. Obviously in real life, inaccurate throws happen all the time and receivers will try their very best to make the grab anyway. This should happen in Madden. If a throw is inaccurate, a receiver should change course and try to get there instead of just continuing on the same route or just standing still like they do sometimes on curl routes. Now on to franchise mode. Franchise mode should allow us to force player injuries. At the start of the year, when I was creating my Denver Broncos franchise, I wanted to have all of the injuries that the Broncos actually had going into the season. And for normal injuries, like in the case of Tim Patrick, who had a torn Achilles, this works fine. They had his torn Achilles in the game, he was going to miss that season. But for less standard injuries like KJ Hamler's heart condition, this was not in the game and KJ Hamler was just ready to go. What I wanted to do was be able to force him to be injured so that I couldn't have him for the year and then decide what to do with him in the offseason. What I instead decided to do was make him a really terrible player, release him into free agency with the plan to re-sign him later and move his stats back up. What this actually ended up doing was deleting him from the franchise entirely, because if a player is below a certain overall, they will just get removed from the free agency pool. So now in my franchise mode, which is 4 seasons deep, KJ Hamler just straight up doesn't exist. If I had had the ability to force injuries, I could have just added some random injury that made him out for the year, and then he'd still be in. NBA 2K allows you to force injuries. MLB The Show allows you to force injuries. I feel like we're not asking a lot as franchise players to be allowed to force injuries. And on that note, there needs to be more long-term injuries in general, and honestly, just more injuries. I have very rarely gotten season-ending injuries, and those things happen all of the time in the real NFL, and these teams have to learn to work with players that aren't nearly as experienced. I'm currently in season 4 of my Broncos franchise, and I am experiencing quite a bit of injuries, but none of them are particularly long-term, more than like 4 or 5 weeks. And this is easily the most injured my team has ever been. Somehow progressive fatigue is still broken. After years of this being an issue, they have yet to fix it. If you don't know if you have progressive fatigue on, oftentimes you will find yourself at the 16th and 17th games of the season with basically no ability to play your starters because they are so fatigued that it just brings your backups in. And you will find this is the case for your opponents as well, and you're just playing against some garbage squad with your own garbage squad, and it completely ruins the end of the season. And the dumbest part about it is that I believe even if you turn off progressive fatigue past that point, it will not fix their stamina until the year resets. This is ridiculous, and it would be a great feature if it worked, because progressive fatigue, very much a thing in real life. You're gonna get more tired as the season goes on, but it completely ruins the game as it sits now, and I haven't used it at all for the past 2 years. I think scouting in Madden 24 is incredibly boring. You don't really have to do anything. You just set your scouts at the start of the season for positions of need, and then you come back to it when you have players fully scouted and write down who you like. It's boring, it's not interactive. I personally liked the scouting where you chose to spend points on certain players to see the highest ratings that they have. This makes it much more of a guessing game, whereas in its current form, it's a pretty for sure thing on what type of player you're getting. Not saying that old system was perfect, but I definitely think it was more interesting than the current system, where I basically don't feel like I have to look at any of my scouted players until I get to the draft. I think that drafted players' true overall and potential should be hidden for longer. And you might be thinking, well, their potential is hidden. Yes, but it's only hidden potential if they have star, superstar, or superstar X factor. I think it should be hidden regardless until they hit a certain amount of snaps. That way, I don't draft a guy and immediately consider him a bust because he has normal dev when I expected him to have hidden dev. I have to use him and see who he actually is. And this makes it a bit more immersive because it's not like coming out of the draft in real life. You know that a player is a for sure thing or not. Oftentimes, players that nobody had their eyes on end up being some of the best players in the NFL. Look at Puka Nacua last year. Almost nobody had heard the guy's name, and then suddenly he's the best rookie wide receiver maybe ever. And then lastly, with scouting, it needs to be more difficult to differentiate between good and bad players. In the NFL draft, there are very few guys that are for sure players that you know are going to be very very good. And a lot of the times, players that people think are for sure players end up being busts. So it should be harder to tell the difference between busts and good players, and it should be much more common to accidentally draft a bust. The thing about Madden franchise mode is that rebuilds are generally pretty easy because drafting is so easy. You never miss on a draft pick, or at least it is very rare. Franchise mode, sort of coming back to the presentation elements, should have storylines and narratives, and I think most specifically that suspensions should be a part of the game. I've seen YouTubers like Mr. Hurricane force suspensions that aren't technically real just to create storylines, and I don't think he should have to do that. I appreciate that he does, but Madden should be doing that for him. In fact, these players should have personality types that could make them more or less likely to be suspended. I understand at the end of the day this game is for children and is marketed towards children, and you can't really have a substance abuse suspension in the game or gambling suspensions in the game. But it doesn't have to say what the suspension is for. It could just say so-and-so player has been suspended for 4 games, and then you cannot use that player for 4 games. So you can keep the reason for the suspension hidden while still having suspensions be in the game. I really like this as an element, and I think it adds a lot to franchise mode. On the note of injured players, why do injured players end up doing post-game things? Somewhat recently, I had a player with a breakout scenario that ended up breaking his collarbone in the middle of the game. And after the game, when we checked up on the breakout scenario, he was just in full pads in the locker room post-game. Shouldn't you be in the hospital, Jerry? You broke your collarbone, my guy. You shouldn't be in your pads still. And that completely pulls away from the immersion. So if a player like that gets injured, you shouldn't even have the option to talk to them post-game. That should just be removed. That one is likely a bit more complicated to program, but it does suck in terms of immersion to see a guy like that in the locker room after he just suffered a fairly serious injury. CPU teams should use more depth during the preseason. If you don't know how the preseason works, in game 1, the starters play the first quarter and then it's the backups for the final 3. Game 2, the starters play the first 2 quarters, it's the backups for the final 2. And in game number 3, the starters play the first 3 quarters and the backups play the 4th. The thing about it is that preseason rosters are absolutely massive. You've got 3rd string, 4th string, 5th string guys on the roster. And I try my best in the preseason to allow everyone to play, because oftentimes a player's ratings will actually play better than their overalls, and who knows, you could find a hidden gem. The CPU doesn't do this. They just put in their 2nd stringers and call it a day. And a lot of the time their 2nd stringer at a certain position is just a starter at a different position. So you'll see an outside linebacker who is very, very good get moved to middle linebacker for the backup squad because they're listed as a 2nd string middle linebacker. It makes it difficult to play these preseason games with your backups because a lot of the time you're just playing against starting caliber players against the CPU. So the CPU teams should just use more and more of their depth. They should rotate more people in during the preseason. And sort of on that same note, CPU teams should be bringing in backups during blowouts. When blowouts happen, either for or against, you most of the time will see backups come in for the 3rd and 4th quarters, depending on the size of the lead. This would be really cool to see from the CPU. See that they have given up on the win, as they probably should when it's like 50-0, and they're allowing their younger dudes to get some snaps. And in that same vein, they need to stop trying so hard when these games are out of hand. And one thing I mean, for example, is if there's like 18 seconds left in a game and the other team has like 1 timeout left, has no way to stop the clock past first down, they shouldn't be using that timeout. They should just be letting the game end. It's unbelievably frustrating that I have to take a knee 2 times in a row, wasting more of my time because the CPU doesn't understand that it has literally no mathematical way to win this game. And on to the crown jewel of Madden 24, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that, Superstar mode. I think that this game mode is awful, and I'm specifically talking about the sort of like be a pro part of Superstar mode where you play a career. First of all, there is a severe lack of content within this game mode. The beginning is really cool. You do a draft combine, you've got a lot of cutscenes, you see your player get drafted and do signings. There's even before one game where my player was in the gym, and that was pretty cool to see. You get sponsorships and you get cutscenes to go along with the sponsorships, but that really only goes through like maybe week 9 of the first season. Past that, the only thing you ever get are text messages, and most of the time these text messages only come up when you hit overall milestones like 90 and 95 overall, and when you're playing a member of of the 99 overall club, in which the game just tells you, oh, you're playing Nick Bosa today, watch out, and that's all it is. It's incredibly lazy, and the fact that it's presented as a text message is unbelievably stupid. At the very least, have it be a phone call with some type of voiceover so that we can see that you put any amount of effort into this. And in all honesty, these things should be cutscenes. Look at 2K and My Player and My Career. The whole game is kind of centered around My Player. There is an unbelievable amount of content outside of just playing the games for your career mode. And every single week before a game in Superstar mode, you have these events that you need to do, and they are the same exact events every single week. The 3 mini games you can do are always the same, and the reward is always the same. The little mini activities that you don't even get to actually do as activities are just a little selection screen, and they are the same almost every week. I cannot tell you how many times I got challenged to a 40-yard dash by one of my teammates and took +1 speed into the upcoming game. It is unbelievably lazy and makes it super repetitive, which is why I tried to quit posting that series like 3 different times. Because essentially you go in, you do the same activities every single week, and then once you hit like 80 overall, you're good enough to just dominate every single game, especially as a quarterback. So you go in, put up absurd stats, you win, you leave, repeat forever and ever and ever. And on that note, why can you not adjust sliders in this game mode? That is ridiculous to me. The most control over difficulty you have is selecting what difficulty you're on. All Madden, all pro, rookie, whatever it is. That is the only control over the difficulty level you have, other than just setting yourself weird challenges. Like, why would we not be allowed to use sliders? It makes no sense at all. This is a video game. Let us play the way we want to play. There should be these options. I shouldn't be forced to play a certain type of way because that's what you wanted the Superstar mode to be. As the creators of the game, I should be able to play however I want. If I want to set the sliders to 100 maxed out on everything, I should be able to do that. If I want to make the game impossibly hard, I should be able to do that. If I want to leave the settings alone and play as you intend, I should be able to do that, but I, as the player, should have the option. And with that, give us the option for team control. I know I could just play as a player lock player inside of franchise mode and essentially do what I'm describing, playing with team control and as one player. But then you don't get the experience of what Superstar mode should be. While it is currently severely lacking content, some people still like the content that's within it. So we should have the option to be able to control the team. In my opinion, it's better to have the burden of choice than to not have a choice at all. Why can't you view a replay of the previous play if you were taken off the field? Let's say it's 3rd down and 10, you throw an incompletion, but something cool happened on the play. You cannot look at that replay because the CPU is taking you off the field to punt it away, and you cannot pause from that screen. And then when you get the opportunity to be on the field again and your first opportunity to pause, the replay function is no longer there. So you have no way to view a replay of a play that just happened if you as the player are being pulled off the field. And as a content creator for the game, that's ridiculous because sometimes I want to grab a cool screenshot for a thumbnail. I want to show a replay and explain my thought process to the viewers. There should just be a replay button after you pause when you get back on the field, and it just allows you to show the replay of the most recent play you have been involved in. That doesn't seem like it would be that difficult. In fact, I believe you can do this in a game like MLB The Show when you do quick managing and you simulate, let's say, the entire game. When you go to the replay screen from the pause menu, it will still be the most recent play that you played. What is so difficult about that? And last but not least, in Superstar mode, how ridiculous is it that you cannot play it offline? Specifically the career mode. The other ones I think are more online oriented, even though I haven't played them. But not being able to play the career mode offline is ridiculous. When I first moved into the apartment I am living in now, I was having internet issues, and when recording these episodes, I would just get booted out of the game I was playing because my internet disconnected. I should be able to play an offline game mode offline. I'm not playing against anyone. I am strictly playing against the CPU. I should be able to play without internet. I'm sure there are some things that I missed when making this list for the video. So if there's anything you can think of that you want to add, please leave a comment down below. And if there's anything you disagree with what I said, also feel free to leave a comment. I love constructive criticism, and I am absolutely happy to be proven wrong on things. But it is my opinion that Madden 24 was an absolutely horrendous game. And boy, oh boy, am I excited for Madden 25, yawn. Hopefully the college football game is better. Hopefully they've learned from some of their mistakes and Madden 25 is actually better. But I guess time will tell. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, if you have some opinions of your own you want to share, feel free to leave a comment. If you've watched all the way to the end and you aren't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that sub button for me. YouTube has shown me that 70% of my viewers are not subscribed, and we're on that push for 2,000 subs, so it would really mean a lot to me. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.